So we will see the best Azure certifications which is right for you. So since cloud computing is one of the fastest growing technology in this modern world, according to a report, public cloud spending will grow from 240 billion in 2020 to nearly 500 billion in 2023. Therefore, nobody can deny the rapid growth of cloud computing in recent years. Many big names have made their presence in the cloud arena with their unique services in a cloud computing environment, such as AWS, Google Cloud Platform, IBM Cloud, etc. And Microsoft Azure is an emerging market leader with 29% application workload of the overall cloud market. Becoming a Microsoft Azure certified professional is the most demanding certification path in the cloud market. In this session, we will cover the best Azure certification exams and provide vital information to help you choose a career path. So whether you are looking to study for an Azure certification or simply want to find out more about what Azure can offer your enterprise. So this Azure is loaded with a lot of learning paths, courses, practice certification exams, hands-on labs, etc. So even Uplatz is loaded with a lot of learning paths, lab challenges, and lab playgrounds. Our learning paths are guided learning experiences that provide step-by-step training to build your technical knowledge and hands-on skills using actual Azure accounts in live environments. So Microsoft has announced some changes in its Azure role-based certifications, such as Azure Administrator, Azure Solution Architect, Azure Developer, Azure AI Developer, and also announced 3 new certifications. 2 of these certifications are fundamental paths, like Azure AI Fundamentals Exam and Azure Data Fundamentals Exam. So the AI exam is also known as AZ 900, and the Azure Data Fundamentals exam is known as Dp200. And the other certification is an associate path, that is Azure Database Administrator Exam. That is Dp200. So Microsoft has many Azure certifications with exams, which are organized into three levels: the fundamental one, the associate level, and the expert level. These certifications purely focus on building knowledge and skills related to market job roles. This revolution was made with the engagement of the community after identifying the job requirements. So Microsoft has announced two new fundamental level certifications. That is Azure AI Fundamentals, that is AI 900, and the DP 900. So let's discuss about these certifications one by one. So the first one is AZ 900, which is the Azure Fundamentals exam. Then the second one is AI 900, which is the Azure AI Development Fundamentals exam. Then DP 900, which is the Data Fundamentals exam. Then AZ 104, which is the Azure Administrator Associate exam. Then the next one is AZ 204, which is the Azure Developer Associate exam. Then we have AZ 500, which is the Azure Security Engineer Associate exam. Then we have AI 100, which is the Azure AI Engineer Associate exam. Then we have DP 100, which is the Azure Data Scientist Associate exam. Then we have Dp200 and Dp201. So these are the Azure Data Engineer and Azure Data Engineer Associate exams. Then we have Dp300, which is the Azure Database Administrator Associate exam. Then we have AZ 303 and AZ 304, which are the Microsoft Certified Solutions Architect Expert exams. Then finally we have AZ 400, which is the Azure Devops Engineer Expert exam. So let's discuss these examinations one by one. The first one you can see it's Azure Fundamentals AZ 900. So this certification is designed to validate the foundational knowledge level of Azure cloud services. It also helps non-technical candidates understand cloud services that are offering services such as sales, purchasing, and marketing Azure cloud services. So the areas covered in this AZ 900, the fundamentals exam, are understand the foundational cloud concepts such as high availability, scalability, fault tolerance, then disaster recovery, scalability, and the difference between CAPEX and OPEX. cap ex and op ex. Then describe the regions, availability zones, resource groups, Azure Resource Manager, and Azure architectural components. Then describe Azure firewalls, DDoS protection, network security group. Then describe the Azure subscription, understand the purchasing of Azure services and products. Then Azure free account and pricing calculator. So you don't have to have any prerequisites knowledge for this. If you are from a technical background, it's enough. You can face around 50 questions in the examination, and there will be a passing score, and the cost is around $100. The next one is AI 900, the Azure AI Fundamentals exam. So candidates who are interested in earning this new fundamental level certification must have a basic knowledge of artificial intelligence and machine learning and how to implement them on Microsoft Azure. In this, there will be the areas covered like describing the AI workloads and considerations, identify features of common AI workloads, and guiding principles for responsible AI, describing the fundamental principles of machine learning on Azure, identify common machine learning types and scenarios, describing the features of computer vision workloads on Azure, identify common types of computer vision solution, identify Azure tools and services for computer vision tasks, and identify Azure tools and services for NLP workloads. Then describe features of conversational AI workloads on Azure and identify common use cases for conversational AI Azure services for conversational AI. So if you have a basic understanding of AI and machine learning, you can take this course and examination. Then the next one is Dp900. Candidates who want to earn this new certification should have core data concepts such as relational or non-relational data while implementing them on Microsoft Azure architecture. The areas covered can be describing tiers of core data workloads, batch and streaming data, and core concepts of data analysis, describing the relational data workloads, relational Azure data services such as comparing PaaS, then SaaS, and infrastructure as a service delivery models. Then identify basic management tasks for relational data, including provisioning and deployment of relational data services and describing query techniques for the data using SQL language. Describe non-relational data workloads and non-relational data offerings on Azure, and describe provisioning and deployment of non-relational data services. Describe analytics workloads and components of a modern data warehouse, and describe data ingestion and processing of Azure and data visualization in Microsoft Power BI. The next one is AZ104, the Microsoft Azure Associate Level Certification. This is one of the associate level certification. The name is Azure Administrator Associate Exam, AZ104. This is for the Microsoft Azure Administrator, and it's the updated version of Microsoft Azure Administrator, that is AZ103, which was there before. This exam will test the knowledge and capabilities of the candidates in the configuration and management of compute, storage, virtual networking, and monitoring in the Azure environment. An Azure administrator is a subject matter expert who is responsible for implementing the Azure-based cloud infrastructure of an organization. The areas covered can be managing Azure AD objects, role-based access control and subscriptions, and governance such as configuring Azure policies and resources. Then manage storage accounts and data in Azure Storage. Configure Azure Files, Azure Blob Storage, and configure storage tiers for Azure Blobs. Configure virtual machines for high availability, scalability, and automate deployment and configuration of VMs. Create and configure VMs, containers, and web apps, including app services and service plans. Configure and manage virtual networking, backup, and monitor Azure resources. The next one is the AZ204. The Microsoft Azure Developer Associate Exam is the AZ204. It is known as the Microsoft Azure Developer Associate Exam. This is the latest version of the Microsoft Azure Developer Associate, that was AZ203 exam, that has been available since February 2020. Candidates for this certification should be familiar with designing, building and testing Azure-based apps and services. Candidates should also have 1-2 years of development experience with proficiency in data storage and connections, Azure SDKs, debugging, monitoring, and performance tuning, etc. The areas covered are implementation of infrastructure as a service, such as provisioning of virtual machines, creation of RM templates, and implementation of Azure functions. Develop solutions for Cosmos DB storage and blob storage. Implement Azure security, such as user authentication and authorization and role-based access. Then troubleshoot and monitor Azure solutions, such as developing code to implement CDN. Then develop event-based solutions, message-based solutions, app service login app, and implement API management while creating API management instance. The next is the AZ500, which is the Microsoft Azure Security Engineer. This certification is designed for candidates who implement and manage security controls, identify and access management, and are responsible for securing cloud data, apps, and networks. As a Microsoft Azure Security Engineer, candidates are responsible for managing and securing cloud-based solutions and may also secure hybrid cloud solutions as part of an end-to-end infrastructure. This exam requires strong skills in automation and scripting, a deep understanding of virtualization technology and virtual networking, and a strong familiarity with Microsoft Cloud services and products. Then the areas covered are configure the Microsoft Azure development for workloads, Azure AD privileged identity management, and Azure tenant security. Then implement network and container security host and Azure resource management security. Then configure Azure Monitor and Azure Log Analytics. Manage security alerts and configure security policies. Then configure and manage security for data infrastructure. Configure SSL, TLS for application security, and configure and manage Key Vault and encryption for data at rest. The next is the AI 100, that is the Microsoft Azure AI Engineer Associate Exam. This associate level certification is designed for candidates who implement Microsoft AI solutions like natural language processing, speech, computer vision, bots, and agents using cognitive services, machine learning, and knowledge mining. So the areas covered can be to select the processing architecture, appropriate data processing technologies, AI models and services, and identify automation requirements and appropriate services and tools for the solution. Design a strategy for ingesting and aggressing data, pipelines for AI apps, integrate bots and AI solutions, and define how users and apps will authenticate to AI services. Then develop AI pipelines, implement AI workflow, and data logging process. Then monitoring the AI components for availability, maintain AI solution for continuous improvements, and recommend changes to an AI solution as per performance data. Next one is the Dp200, the Microsoft Azure Data Scientist Associate Exam. This certification is designed to learn about designing and implementing a data science solution on Azure. You will learn how to apply the Azure machine learning approaches in training, evaluation, and deployment of models that are used to solve business problems. The areas covered can be creating and configuring Azure data science environments, assess the deployment environment constraints, analyze and recommend tools to meet system requirements. Prepare and transform data into usable data sets, identify and resolve anomalies, and review visual data analytics to discover the patterns. Perform feature selection, extraction, and scaling, and identify data imbalances, split data sets, and evaluate model performance. The next one is the Dp200 and Dp201. To become a certified as Azure data engineer, you will have to pass two examinations, the Dp200 and Dp201. The Dp200 exam is the implementing an Azure data solution. This exam is designed to implement data solutions that include provisioning of data storage services, batch data processing, develop streaming, implement security requirements, implement data retention policies, and accessing external data sources. Candidates must have the ability to implement Azure SQL databases, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Data Lake Storage, Azure Stream Analytics, and Blob Storage services. The areas covered are implementing relational and non-relational data storage solutions, manage data security by implementing data masking and encrypting data at rest and in motion, develop streaming and batch processing solutions, then monitor data storage, data processing, and optimize Azure data solutions. Then the Dp201 is designing an Azure data solution. This is the second exam for Azure Data Engineer, and this exam helps engineers to design data storage, data processing, and data security and compliance solutions for Azure services. Candidates must have the ability to design Azure SQL databases, Azure Cosmos DB, Azure Data Lake Storage, Azure Stream Analytics, and Blob Storage services. The areas covered can be designing relational and non-relational cloud data stores, design real-time and batch processing solutions, and provision compute resources. Design the security solutions as encryption, auditing, and privacy of the data. Then design data retention policies and plan archiving strategies. The next one is Dp300, the Azure the Database Administrator Associate Exam. This is a role-based Azure certification exam that would be ideal for the candidates who are interested in administering cloud-based database systems. By achieving this certification, candidates will be responsible to administer and manage relational databases on cloud and on-premises developed on Azure Data Services and SQL Server. The areas covered can be planning and implementing resources of data platform, such as deploy database solutions on selected platforms and configure customized deployment templates. Implement a secure database environment such as Azure AD authentication and implement security for data at rest and data at transit. Monitor activities, implement performance-based maintenance tasks, and configure resources for optimal performance. Then review the queries, index design, and database tables. Then planning and implementing high availability and disaster recovery strategy for continuous services and perform backups. Then the next one is the expert level Azure certifications. So to become an Azure Certified Solutions Architect, you have to pass two exams, the AZ303 and AZ304. The AZ303 is the Microsoft Azure Architect Technologies. The exam is the updated version of the former Azure Solution Architect AZ300 exam for testing the capabilities of candidates for managing Azure cloud resources. Candidates who are interested in earning this certification should be subject matter experts in implementing cloud resources on Microsoft Azure, such as compute, storage, networking, and security of the resources. The areas covered are implement Azure AD infrastructure, monitoring, storage accounts, and virtual networking. Manage workloads in Azure Cloud, implement network security and load balancing. Implement container-based apps, create and configure AKS. Then implement NoSQL and Azure SQL databases. Then what is this AZ304? It's the Microsoft Azure Architect design. This exam for designing Microsoft Azure architecture is the updated version of the former Azure Solution Architect design AZ301 exam. The areas covered can be to gather requirements, optimize consumption strategy, and design auditing and monitoring strategy. Then design authentication, authorization, and identity management. Design data management, data protection, and data flow strategies. Then design high availability, site recovery, and data archiving strategies. Then design deployments, migration, and API integration strategies. Then design compute, storage, and networking and monitoring strategies. Then the next one is the AZ400. This certification is designed for DevOps professionals who bring people, process, and technologies closer to the world and deliver valuable services and products that meet business requirements and objectives. DevOps professionals are responsible for delivering cloud services by improving collaboration and communications, designing and implementing strategies for app coding, and creating automation, continuous delivery, monitoring, and feedback. For this job role, candidates should be proficient with agile practices and familiar with both Azure development and operations process. The areas covered can be to design a secure development lifecycle and tool integration process. Design and implement version control and mobile DevOps strategy. Implement and integrate source control and manage to build infrastructure. Then analyze and manage hosting infrastructure and Azure Kubernetes service infrastructure. Implement infrastructure as code, compliance, and security of the infrastructure. Then design and optimize the feedback mechanism. So Microsoft is one of the biggest players in the cloud market with around 35% application workload of the overall cloud market. If you are interested in making a career using Azure technologies, we highly recommend choosing the above mentioned certifications. These role-based certifications include configuration and management of compute, storage, networking, security, reliability, integration, development, and operations capabilities. Organizations are rapidly adopting Microsoft Azure cloud services, and the demand is growing for certified Azure administrators, solution architects, developers, and security engineers. To become certified and successfully land a job, you will not only need to learn how to configure, manage, and secure the Azure cloud environments, but you will also need practical hands-on experience. So Uplatz offers Microsoft Azure Certifications learning paths that not only help you pass the certification exams, but also allow you to test your skills in real-world environments with hands-on labs, lab challenges, and lab playgrounds. From configuring Azure infrastructure for cloud administrators to integrating Azure services for cloud architects, these learning paths fully prepare you with the knowledge and experience you need to start or advance your Azure career. So now let's understand these certifications in a deeper knowledge. Information about Azure. We will discuss about Microsoft Azure Certification Path. So it will be very helpful guide for the people who are interested in pursuing their career in Azure. So like which certifications to do and what are the different types of certifications and what are the career options for these certifications. So let's discuss them. So basically in 2018 at the Ignite conference, Microsoft has announced significant changes to Azure Certification Path to make Azure certifications more role-based. Okay. This session will clear your confusion on different certifications available in Azure and helps you in finding the one which suits you from Microsoft Azure Certification Path. So as cloud computing is one of the technological breakthroughs of 21st century, it has completely transformed the storage system of the organizations. Prior to the invention of the cloud, there were a lot of limitations and security issues to store the ever-growing data of the organizations. So how to store the ever-growing data of the transformations of the organizations. Cloud computing is an innovation in the security issues. So cloud computing is an innovation in the computing world and freed organizations from all types of issues, such as low storage capacity, huge investments, high operating costs, low security, huge maintenance, and all. So these were the major problems of the organizations, like huge investments, storage capacity, huge maintenance, low security, and high operating costs. So cloud computing has helped the organizations to free from all these limitations. So Azure is one of the top cloud service providers in the market and growing at a faster rate with its unique features. Constant innovativeness, high flexibility, and easy to use approach have acquired its huge popularity in the cloud computing segment. Azure is one of the widely deployed model by many organizations, and it is offering more employment opportunities. So if you are about to start your career in Microsoft Azure, then cloud computing, or if you are already working as an Azure professional and wish to take your career to the next level, then this session is for you. To set yourself apart from the growing competition, the best way is to have certifications. To certify the skill of a candidate, Azure is offering various certifications suitable to different roles and levels. So why do you need Azure certification? So certification demonstrate your skill and level of expertise in handling the complexities of Azure. Companies all over the world are looking for Azure certified professionals and with good paychecks. There are different certifications available in Azure. Choose the one which suits you based on your level of expertise and background. By the end of this session, you will get answers to your questions like type of certifications, which one is best for you, how much each certification will cost, and what is the syllabus, and few more things. So let's discuss the role-based Azure certification. The introduction of role-based certifications has created a simple learning roadmap from the fundamental stage to the associate stage, and lastly to the expertise stage. Microsoft Azure is offering the following role-based certifications for different levels, like Azure Fundamentals, Azure Administrator, Associate, Azure Developer, Associate, Azure Solutions, Architect, Expert, Azure Devops, Engineer Expert, Azure Security Engineer, Associate, Azure Data Engineer, Associate, Azure AI, Artificial Intelligence Engineer, Associate. So these are the role-based certifications offered by Azure for different levels. Azure Fundamentals, Azure Administrator Associate, Azure Developer Associate, Azure Solutions Architect Expert, Azure Devops Engineer Expert, Azure Security Engineer Associate, Azure Data Engineer Associate, and Azure AI Engineer Associates. So let's discuss each of these certifications one by one. The first one is the Azure Fundamentals. So in this, the candidates will learn the cloud concepts. Then they will learn core Azure services. Then they will learn security, privacy, compliance, and trust. They will understand the Azure pricing and support. Then they will go through Azure 900 fundamentals. Then finally, the certification. So this one, the Azure Fundamentals, also we call it as Azure 900. So this is the first exam one should go for. This is the first certification one should go for. This certification would help you in demonstrating your fundamental knowledge of cloud services in Azure. Azure Fundamentals certification is even suitable for those who are from a non-technical background and possess a minimum understanding of the cloud concepts. So the exam for this Azure 900, which is the Azure Fundamentals, is considered as the first level in the Azure Certification Path. It is treated as an optional step, but completing this certification would be helpful to some extent for your career scope. So then what are the prerequisites for this? So to undergo this certification, one should be familiar with Azure platform. They should have a basic knowledge of cloud technologies. The exam fees varies from 70 to 110 USD. You can take it in multiple languages like English, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese. Okay. So in this, the cloud concepts will be of 15 to 20% of the weightage. Then security, compliance, privacy, and trust. Are 25 to 30% important of this percent weightage. Then the core services are about 30 to 35% important. Then finally, pricing model. Are about 25% to 30% important. So, I mean, when you take the exam, these are the important concepts by their percentage. Cloud concepts will carry 15 to 20% of the total weightage. Then the core services will carry 30 to 35% of the weightage, like this. So this is about the first Azure Fundamentals, that is the Azure 900 certification. The second one is the Azure Administrator Associate. So this is also known as AZ 103. So the Azure Administrator Associate certification is designed to test the ability and level of expertise in handling things like security, cloud computing capabilities, applications, operating systems, security, storage within the Microsoft Azure. So in the certification, the candidates We'll start with AC 900, that is the one we discussed about, but this is a kind of optional. Then they will learn how to manage subscriptions and resources. Then they will understand how to implement and manage the storage. Then they will understand how to deploy and manage the virtual machines. Then how to configure and manage the virtual networks. And how to manage the identities. Then finally, they will get certified. So for this Azure 103, which is Microsoft Azure Administrator, the candidates who are appearing for this exam should be familiar with the concepts like Azure Portal, ARM templates, PowerShell, storage structures, virtualization, networking, and cloud infrastructure. To go for the Azure Devops Engineer Expert exam, you must complete Azure Administrator Manager certification first. So this AC103 is a main prerequisite to achieve the Devops Engineer Expert certification. So what are the prerequisites for AC103? So you should possess the knowledge of the operating systems, cloud storage, infrastructure, Azure applications, basic knowledge of virtualization tools and network components. Having the PowerShell and command line interface knowledge is an added advantage. So the examination fees can vary from $120 to $150 USD. You can again take the examination in different languages. So then the exam modules and weightage. The managed Azure resources and subscriptions will be about 15 to 20% of the total weightage, and implement and control virtual machines will be of again 15 to 20%. Storage management is of again 15 to 20%. Identity management is of 15 to 20%. Configure and maintain virtual networks. This is of 30 to 35% of the total weightage. So this was the second type of certification. The third one is the Azure Developer Associate. So again, to start with this certification, you need to have the AZ900 certification, but it is quite optional. Okay. So the candidates for this certification will first learn the Azure infrastructure as a service compute solutions. Then they will learn about platform as a service compute solutions. They will then learn the Azure storage. They will learn how to implement Azure security. They will learn how to monitor, troubleshoot, and optimize the solutions. And then they will connect to Azure third-party services. Then finally, they will achieve this certification. So this Azure Developer Associate is also known as AZ203 certification. So the Microsoft Azure developer is a candidate who has to look after the things like design, develop, test, manage the cloud solutions, services, and applications. The candidate is required to associate with different candidates like cloud database administrators, cloud solution architects, cloud administrators, and clients to implement these solutions. Then the exam for these developing solutions for the Microsoft Azure. So the Azure Developer Associate exam is designed to measure the candidate's ability in accomplishing the tasks such as develop the Azure infrastructure as a compute solution, develop a fast compute solution, implement the Azure security, then develop the Azure storage, troubleshoot, then monitor, then optimize the solutions, and integrate with third-party connections. So what are the prerequisites for this AZ203 examination? The candidates should possess the ability to develop apps and services using Azure tools and technologies. Okay. Possess the ability to develop the applications and services using Azure tools and technologies. Then the candidate should have minimum 1 year experience in developing the solutions. Then the candidate should have complete proficiency in at least one cloud supported programming language. The examination fee can be around 150 to 160 US dollars, and you can take the exam in multiple languages. Then finally, the exam modules and weightage. So the Azure Infrastructure as a Service compute solution will be of around 10 to 15% of the weightage. Then Azure Platform as a Service solution will be for about 20-25%. Then Azure Storage will be for around 15 to 20%. Then optimizing, monitoring, and troubleshooting the Azure solutions. It will be for around 15 to 20%. Then Azure Security implementation is for around 10 to 15%. Then connect and consume Azure third-party services. Azure and connect and consume to Azure third-party services will be for about 20 to 25% of the total weightage. So this was about the Azure 203 examination, that is for the developer associate. The next one is Azure Solutions Architect Expert. So the Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect should possess the expertise in various concepts like compute, storage, network, and security. All these skills, the candidate in designing the solutions that can be executed on Azure. So based on the recent changes and introduction of role-based certifications from the Azure, one should pass 2 exams like Microsoft Azure Architect Design and Azure Architect. Once you qualify these 2 certifications, you will get a badge of Azure Solution Architect Expert. So to start with this certification, Azure Solutions Architect Expert certification, one can start with Azure 900, which was discussed in the previous sessions. The first one, the Azure Fundamentals, which is called the Azure 900. You can start with that, but it is quite optional. Then the candidates will learn about deploying and configuring the infrastructure, then deploying and configuring the Azure infrastructure, then create and deploying the apps, then implement the authentication and secure the data, and develop the cloud and Azure storage. So this, we call it as the candidate will do deploy and configure infrastructure. Then he will create and deploy apps. Then he will implement authentication and secure the data. Then he will develop cloud and Azure storage. Or the other way, he will go in this way, like determine the workload requirements. Then he will design the identity and security. Then he will design a data platform solution. Design a business continuity strategy. Then design the deployment, migration, and integration. Then design a infrastructure strategy. So then, after achieving these two goals, he will get certified as Microsoft Azure Solutions Architect. So in this, we discussed two technologies like the Microsoft Azure Architect technologies, which is called the Azure 300. The one I showed you in the above steps, this way, this is the way for achieving Azure 300, that is Azure Architect technologies. So this certification exam, that is the Azure 300 certification exam, is designed to test the ability of a candidate in the technical tasks such as implementing security and workloads, deploy and configure the infrastructure, implement authentication and data protection, develop and deploy the applications, develop Azure cloud and storage, and you have to pass this exam to get the Azure Solutions Architect Expert position. And the prerequisites to achieve Azure 300 is that the candidate should possess knowledge of identity, security, IT operations, and data management. Should have 1 year experience. The candidate should have knowledge of Azure development, Azure administration, and Devops. So in this, the exam modules and weightage are as follows. The implementing and configure the infrastructure. This will have about 25 to 30% of the weightage. The architect cloud technology solutions concepts will have 5 to 10% of the weightage. Implementing the security and workloads will have 20 to 25% of the weightage. Develop and implementing the apps is about 5 to 10% weightage. Develop the cloud will have 20 to 25% of the weightage. Implementing and securing the data will have about 5 to 10% of the weightage. So like this, it will have the weightage. The first one for about 30%, the second one for about 10%, the third point for about 25%, the fourth about 10%, the fifth point for about 25%, and the last one implementing and securing the data for about 10%. The exam fees will be around 160 USD. And you can take this examination in different languages like English, Korean, Chinese, and Japanese. Then the second way, which we discussed for this architect expert. So this, we call it as AZ301. So to achieve AZ301, that is Microsoft Azure Architect design. So this examination is conducted to test your capability in accomplishing the technical tasks, such as designing and securing and identity, determining the workload requirements, designing a business continuity strategy, designing a data platform solution, designing the deployment, integration, and migration, and an infrastructure strategy. You should pass the Azure 301 to become an Azure Solutions Architect expert. And to take this 301, the prerequisites are same as to take the Azure 300 examination. But the only criteria is that you need to pass AZ 300 to take AZ 301 examination. So let's discuss about the exam modules and weightage. So determining the workload requirements. We'll have about 15% weightage, then designing a data platform solution. We'll have about 20% weightage. Then designing the deployment, integration, and migration. We'll have about 15% weightage. Then designing for security and identity. We'll have about 25% weightage. Then developing the strategy for business continuity. We'll have about 20% weightage. Then designing the infrastructure strategy. We'll have about 20% weightage. The exam fee will be around $160 US. The fifth certification in Azure is Azure Devops Engineer Expert. So to start this examination to take the certification, this is also known as AZ 400. So you need to start with AZ 103 to take the certification. The candidates will then design a DevOps strategy. Then they will implement DevOps development process. Then they will implement continuous integration. Then they will implement continuous delivery. Then they will implement dependency management. Then they will implement application infrastructure. Then they will implement continuous feedback. So then finally, they will be certified as the Azure Devops Engineer. The candidates who can take certification are the DevOps professionals who combine technologies, people, and process with an aim to constantly deliver high quality products and services that are capable enough to meet the end user's requirements. So the Azure 400 certification exam is designed to test your ability in DevOps strategies, DevOps development process, application infrastructure, dependency management, continuous integration, and delivery. To become an Azure DevOps engineer, one should have already received the certification of either the Azure Developer Associate or Azure Administrator Associate, which we have discussed in the previous session. Then the prerequisites for this certification that a candidate should have knowledge of Azure development and Azure administration, and also requires expertise in the areas like design and development of practices for version control, compliance, configuration, then configuration management, then infrastructure as code, and then development, release, and testing with the help of Azure technologies. Then they should be expert in agile practices. Then the exam modules and weightage. So designing a DevOps strategy will have 20 to 25% weightage. Then implementing continuous integration will have around 15% weightage. Then the continuous implementing the dependency management will have about 10% weightage. Then continuous feedback will have about 15% weightage. Then implementing the DevOps development process will have about 25% weightage. Then implementing continuous delivery will have about 15% weightage. Then finally implementing the application infrastructure will have about 20% weightage. So this was about the Azure DevOps Engineer Expert certification, that is AZ 400. The next certification is Azure Security Engineer Associate. Which is the Azure 500. The security engineer is a candidate who is skilled and looks after security controls, threat protection, data protection, identity access, networks in the cloud, and end-to-end infrastructure. So to take this AZ500, you need to start with AZ900, which is quite optional. Then the candidates will then learn about managing the identity and access. Then implementing the platform protection. Then managing the security operations. Then to secure the data and applications. Then finally, he will be certified with Azure 500. That is the Azure Security Engineer. So the Azure Security Technologies exam will measure your ability to accomplish technical tasks such as implementing platform protection, manage identity and access, security operations, and secure the data and applications. To take this exam, you need not have passed any other certification. So what are the prerequisites? The prior experience in implementing security controls on the Microsoft Azure platform. Expertise in areas like cloud and tier architecture, virtualization, networking, and Amazon Kubernetes services. Capability to identify and address vulnerabilities for protecting networks, data, and applications. Then expertise in identity and access management, scripting, automation, and maintaining security status. Then the exam modules and weightage. So managing identity and access will be around 25% weightage. Managing the security operations will be around 20% weightage. Implement platform protection will be around 40% weightage. Securing the data and applications will be around 35% weightage. So the certification cost for this will be around $160 US. The next is the Azure Data Engineer Associate. So to take this examination, again, you need to start with Azure 900, which is quite optional. Then the candidates will achieve two types of technologies here. The one is the Dp200. The other one is the Dp201. So Dp200 is the implementing an Azure data solution. Then Dp201 is designing an Azure data solution. So to achieve data solution, that is Dp200, to achieve Dp200, you need to implement data storage solutions, then manage and develop the data processing, and then monitor and optimize the data solutions. Then to achieve Dp201, you need to design Azure data storage solutions, design data processing solutions, then design the data security and compliance. Then you will be certified with the Azure Data Engineer certification. So the Azure data engineers are responsible for designing and implementing the management, security, then monitoring and data privacy using a full stack of Azure data services to meet the business requirements. So one has to qualify 2 exams to get a Data Engineer Associate certification, which are Dp200 and Dp201. So the Dp200 is the implementing an Azure data solution. This examination is designed to test the candidate's abilities in areas like implementing data storage solutions, monitor and optimize data solutions, and develop data processing. You are expected to qualify the Dp200 exam to take Dp201. So the Dp201, which is designing an Azure data solution, is designed to test your ability to accomplish the technical tasks like designing the data processing solutions, designing the Azure data storage solutions, design for data security and compliance. So the prerequisites for Dp201 is that you need to have the ability to develop solutions with the help of Azure services. And you don't have to have any prior certification. Then the next one is the Azure AI Engineer Associate. So this is known as the AI 100. So in this certification, you will start with analyzing the solution requirements, then designing the AI solutions, then implementing and monitoring AI solutions. Then you will achieve the AZ 100 certification, like designing and implementing the Azure AI solution. Then finally, you will get the certification of this Azure AI Engineer. So the Azure AI Engineer Associate is a professional who uses his ability, mining knowledge, machine learning skills to implement Microsoft AI solutions that involve computer vision, natural language processing, speech bots, and agents. So this exam is designed to test the knowledge of the candidates in accomplishing the technical tasks like analyzing solution requirements, design solutions, integrate models into AI solutions, deploy and monitor the solutions. So the exam modules and weightage, like analyzing the solution requirements, will be of around 30% weightage. Implementing and monitoring the AI solutions will be around 30% weightage. Designing the AI solutions will be around 45% weightage. So having said these, certification is the best available option to fast forward in your career.